All right, so today I'm going to be chasing some RC airplanes with my DJI Avata 2, but that ain't my main purpose for being here. Today, I'm going to talk to some of my friends for you guys about the DJI Avata 2 and more traditional FPV drones. And the reason why I'm going to be touching on this subject matter is because we're having a huge situation here with DJI in the United States. They pretty much closed shop online. They're not supplying anything for us in the United States. And now I'm hearing that people that have Care Refresh, that had drones coming back, they're getting stuck in customs. So if you follow my channel, you know that I just got my drone back from DJI. And a week later, these videos started popping up and I started seeing comments in Facebook and all over social media that just nightmare stories about people's drones being stuck. So I basically got lucky. My drone got in right before everything hit the fan. But potentially it's going to get worse because in December, they might completely ban DJI. And that leaves us with a lot of people thinking about switching to traditional FPV drones. So I'm going to ask my friends some questions in hopes that it'll help you out there if you're thinking about transitioning to a traditional FPV drone. Let's get into it. All right, so let's get down to the purpose of this video. We're in a dilemma here in the United States, and most of us started off with DJI, right? And DJI went into the FPV industry and started making drones like this, the Avata 2. They have the Avata and they also have the DJI FPV. Now, beside me are two guys that are very well versed in traditional FPV drones. And what I'm trying to bring to you guys is there's a lot of us thinking about switching up to traditional FPV drones at this point, being that these are going to be harder to get as time goes by. In a few months, they might be eliminated completely. So you will not be able to get these service, etc. That's going to be the worst part of it all. But anyway, getting back to traditional FPV drones, these guys know how to build them. They understand how they work. So if you're thinking about switching up to traditional FPV drones, I know the main questions, which I'm going to ask these guys now, and I didn't tell them the questions beforehand. All right, so my first question is there anything equivalent to a panic button, which DJI has? If you're in a situation, no matter if you're upside down, sideways, whatever it is, it'll correct itself and just hover. So it'll pop out of manual mode, it'll stop. Is there anything equivalent to in the traditional FPV world like that?
I think with the upcoming Beta Flight 4.6, they have positional hold.
So position, so you get into a situation and it'll just take control and leave it hovering?
From what I understand, it works similar to that, yes. Oh. And also altitude hold.
Oh, okay. So that's in the works. So
yes. That's still in beta testing right now, but
so that's a good thing, right? Because technology moves quick. And things that they're working on now will be available, right?
Yeah.
You have anything to say about that?
Yeah, so there's position and altitude hold. And by the way, I am not an expert. You're giving me way too much credit.
Yeah, but this guy built moon rovers and all types of stuff. It's amazing what he does.
Thank you. But no,
Cybertruck. Yeah. He built the first Cybertruck, but it's kind of an inside joke, but it's kind of true. So
yes, mostly harmless, which is a 180-pound RC six-wheel drive, six-wheel steer truck. But back on drones. So Beta Flight will support 4.6 position hold, which will lock the drone ideally in one spot, and altitude hold, which it may drift a little bit, but it'll hold its altitude so you don't totally get knocked down if something happens. There's a caveat though. Inside our current flight controllers, there's a little barometer in here, and that's what's measuring our altitude. And there's a magnetometer to give your compass heading, and there's a usually 6 or 9 degree it's chip that it's accelerometer to hold your position. The way they're implemented on our flight controllers is for speed and not for precision. So that barometer, just the mere act of I'm doing some acrobatics, which I'm only capable of just doing rolls, I lose my signal. I hit the panic button. It'll hopefully recover.
Right.
But because of all of the movement of the air, and I'm not even talking about prop wash, just the movement of the air, that barometer is getting hammered. So it won't be as precise as the DJI, which has it recessed and away from all the other airflow. These little things we would have to kind of figure out.
Right.
But because we're interested in keeping everything on a board, standard, easy to replace, not another sensor to wire.
Right. Like another model
Right.
or something.
We
like
lose precision to gain convenience.
that. Right. But you know, honestly, I think people would sacrifice, you know, having a little movement to save the drone.
But also remember, you're no longer relying on DJI Care Refresh. You're building them and you're repairing them and you're back in the air that much quicker.
Yeah, so if you're familiar with binding flies, you could buy a lot of these drones already built with everything that you want. But once you crash it, that's when the learning starts, right? Like that's what most people buy, the binding flies, and that's how they learn.
Right.
Once they crash. Now, let's get back to another question, which is a big question that a lot of people have that came up with DJI. Return to home. Is there anything that would you press a button and it'll come back to you?
Yes.
So
Yes?
Yeah.
Yes.
No, that's been implemented. I forget when they started that, but that's already in beta flight now, and they just keep improving it as it goes.
Now, is it a separate device that you need on the drone, or is it
all
like
these
in the main board?
these require a GPS module.
Oh, so a GPS
Yeah,
module.
yeah.
So today I could buy a traditional FPV bind and fly drone with that module. Or
You would have, as long as as long as there's a GPS module in the drone, you can configure it in beta flight to have return to home.
all right. So that's a plus.
Yeah.
That's
And
a plus.
it's a very good feature. Again, I have very limited experience with this.
Yeah.
But with GPS, it has to be wired up so the signals are shielded. You get your maximum satellite count and coverage. Because when it starts up, as you know, it takes a little while to build up its count, to build up its signal, and just imagine being dropped into a bar where no one really is like speaking to you. You're trying to listen in on all the conversations, and that's what it's doing. It's negotiating that initial signal. And the main weakness of this is actually a traditional FPV drone. I'm running on a 7-inch frame, but my stack is a 30 by 30, very industry standard. DJI uses other sensors like LiDAR and IR and positional sensors. There's obstacle avoidance. So if I'm flying in an area that there's a lot of trees and I enabled return to home and the drone thinks it went up a certain altitude, but kind of like the barometer issues I covered, maybe it doesn't, and it smacks into a tree on the way back or building.
Right.
This platform as we know it currently does not have the advanced level of obstacle avoidance that DJI currently has.
Yeah.
It's getting there. It's moving very quickly though.
You're saying like, you know, it's not going to be as
It's going to be the same experience as like the Mini 1 and Mini 2. We had return to home, but there was no obstacle avoidances.
right.
That's exactly the same experience you're going to
All right. So yeah, this is too. This don't got obstacle avoidance.
Right.
But you know, once it starts getting close enough, you could just take control at that point.
Correct.
So,
The
but can
point
you do
is-
that with the FPV drone? A
I
traditional FPV drone? Could you take control? Like, say if it goes into return to home, and I have more questions about the return to home. But
Okay.
say it goes into return to home, and all of a sudden you get a picture. Can you just?
Yes.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
can
And
override.
also, return to home could be activated if you fail safe and lose connection from your remote.
right.
That also will.
Well,
kick
then that would be like almost like a bailout, right? Can you activate return to home on a traditional
Absolutely. You set it
like
up as
you-
a separate switch.
Really? So
Yeah.
then you could really use that as your panic button.
Right,
If
I
you're in a
mean-
bad situation. Like say you just see something jumps in your way and you just want to bail out of a trick.
Sure.
You could press the return to home button.
Yeah.
So then you have the solution now.
It's less
And the beta
refined
flight is
and-
gonna come
Yeah.
and make it a better
It's getting better and better, but it's nothing, I would not compare. There's a lot of configuration, a lot of testing you need to do before you actually implement it.
Right,
There's a
right.
lot of great videos. Joshua Bardwell has a lot of great videos on how to configure it.
right.
But
right.
it's not like you turn it on and it works.
Right.
Once
So
you have-
you have to make it.
Yeah.
Now, how computer savvy would somebody have to be to make these adjustments, the necessary adjustments, or you bind the fly and it's ready to go on return to home and
No,
everything?
it's not ready to. It's
No.
not ready to go.
So you're gonna have to be a little computer savvy,
You're
like
gonna
plug in your drone to a computer, that type of thing.
You're gonna have to plug your drone into computer, and you're gonna have to do all your changes within beta flight.
So there'll be
There's
some
yeah.
YouTubes that you have to
Yeah,
research and
yes.
and,
There's
and
several
dedicate some
disciplines
time.
that are involved. It's like ice hockey. You have to skate, you have to fight, and you have to stick handle. So with this, just plugging it into Betaflight, that's being familiar enough with your computer to do something like that, to install the Betaflight configurator. And then you discover, oh, there are some things that even though I'm just plugged into the USB port, they don't really work right in Betaflight. I need to turn my radio on. And then lastly, oh, there's other things where I have to have the battery also plugged in. And for someone starting off, that's a lot of steps,
Yes.
right? Just to tell them, okay, to test your motor direction, take your props off, plug in everything, turn it on, and then walk through this wizard. It's like one thing, two things, three things, four things using the radio. That's a lot of moving pieces.
Yeah. It's a lot of parts.
Setting up your VTX, your OSD, everything is modular, and it's configured that way in Betaflight.
So you got to adjust all the individual components
It's
basically,
easy
and
once you do it.
Yes.
But the thing is, for the average person, this is like learning how to drive a manual transmission.
Yeah.
In the beginning, it's daunting, and it takes a long time even to get all of your shifts. You don't blow it with a money shift. You don't do things like jump gears, and it takes a little while.
So this Betaflight, right? It's a website.
You could access it through the website now. It's also a standalone configurator that you can install.
Okay.
You can use either one. The advantage of the website is it's always going to be the latest version.
Okay. Now, do you think that's going to be the hardest transitional part of going from this to that, like working with Betaflight? What's the hardest part? I mean, say a person like me that's been flying for a long time, almost 10 years now, and I've never flown one of those. Will be like something challenging, or
It depends on the perspective of what you were expect. If you just want out of the box, pretty much the only thing you have to do with a bind and fly is just get your modes correct with the remote control. Everything else is pretty much all set up at the factory. And once you do that, you're ready to fly, assuming that you already have some experience in flying.
that's where you adjust rates and stuff.
You could do that, but
yeah.
there's plenty of presets where really good presets in Betaflight that you can load up.
Okay.
But even out of the box, I wouldn't even do that because the manufacturers tune it to all the specifications of the frame and the weight and everything. So I wouldn't touch with that. Where it's going to get a little, so if you want to just get up in the air quickly, you can pretty much, aside from getting the remote control configured, you can get up in the air pretty quick. Where they don't come when you purchase it, I don't believe any manufacturer puts by default they enable GPS. I think they do that for a reason because it's unpredictable and they don't want to have any liability in that. So
so you have to buy it.
So you're going to have to
and get it installed.
Like I remember even 3 years ago when I got my first 5-inch, my iFlights, they came with a separate card that came with all the instructions on how to set it up. They just wouldn't do it I guess because they didn't want to be responsible.
Right.
But
Wow.
if you're going to want to do that, that's where I think the biggest learning curve is going to be.
Okay.
Little tip here for a lot of people who are used to, for example, using leaded solder. They are usually at 500 degrees, 550. When you work with the flight controllers, because of the nature of the way the pads are set up, you got to kick it up to like 700.
Yep.
Right? And a lot of people don't know that. They'll burn out a board. A lot of this information, my point is, there's little bits and things of everything that you have to kind of curate and put together. It's like building your own go-kart. Right? You buy off-the-shelf components, tie everything together, and then hopefully it works. DJI is like a full experience of, I want the BMW M3 Evolution, and you just get that turnkey package, or I want that Porsche 911 GT3, all set up for you, ready to go. Whereas with me, the go-kart, I'm doing laps trying to figure out, why is my throttle not right? Why is everything weird? The rates that we're talking about, the angles, the exponential, all of these little factors, I spent a lot of time figuring it out, and I had done flight before, but for someone who's never done this, they're going to have to rely on things out of the box or looking at YouTube videos that really walk them through from a beginner's perspective. And like Josh Bardwell's really good. I learned a lot of stuff from that, but I also think there's a lot of stuff that he's telling that it sounds like it's for beginners, but it's actually not. Right. And me being a beginner wouldn't have known that until, I probably shouldn't even try this yet. I'll wait a little bit.
Right,
I
right.
would also suggest when I first started building, I was looking at parts lists for other binding flies just to get an idea, just to minimize the learning curve. Did I buy the right parts? Will they work together?
Right.
So you look at other, you want to build a 3-inch. What's some 3 inches out there on the market? What kind of motors are they using? What kind of frames are they using? What weight are they? What kind of flight controls? So that's another good way to start if you're going to build on your own.
As traditional FPV pilots, what do you think is the main difference between this and that? Is it just the refined experience, or
If we're talking about that experience, for me, the difference, if you're flying this in manual mode, the difference is landing and takeoff. That's about it. Because
could-
this is assisted.
yeah,
And to be quite honest with you, I think a lot of the things that you're saying that what are the apples comparison, like the panic button? I think when you get really comfortable with this, those things are not needed. That's just my own personal opinion.
yeah,
Because once you get comfortable enough, you know how to maneuver, manually, that you don't need a panic button. You also have to understand when you get into this type of flying, you're going to crash, you're going to break, and then you need to accept that, because if you don't, it's going to prevent you from taking risks and having fun.
right.
But
No, I get
but once you get comfortable for me, I started repairing. That was what unlocked the freedom for me. First was, how do I fly this thing? The second is, if I break it and I want to fly more aggressive and I break it, so repairing was the next step for me.
Right.
As soon as I knew I knew how to change a motor or replace a flight control or any of these parts, it just opened up. It just opened up my mind to, like, I accept I can crash, but I'm gonna do these things. I'm gonna progress. So you really have to accept the fact that it could get a little expensive, but again, that's part of the hobby.
I have another question. Now that DJI is pretty much getting squeezed out, and you can't get these O3s and O4s. Well, O3s were already a problem, but now O4s are a problem. Like trying to get a hold of an O4 camera. What is the best camera outside of the DJI lineup if you were to build an FPV drone now and you couldn't get hold of a DJI camera, 04 or 03? What's the best camera?
I'll just say, you have 3 options right now. You can go analog, you can go HD0.
No, you coming from DJI, you're used to a clear picture, a digital picture. What would you say is number 2, or maybe equivalent to DJI? What's in the market
The
right
only
now?
2 competing would be Walksnail and HD0, with Walksnail being the closest to DJI.
Okay. All right. I'll find it and I'll put a link.
And the experience, from what I hear, the experience of the premium Walksnail experience is relatively somewhere between, it's like an 03.
Okay, so you got 4K 60 and all that on?
Yeah, I can't speak to it too much. I just know
It records
yeah,
4K
yeah.
60, or 4K 30 on some models, but your goggles are still standard HD.
Right.
The other thing is, based on what a lot of other like reviewers, and I think the people who are not really shilling for any one company, the more objective viewpoints, they would consider Oxnail as like a B+ to the DJI environment. And HD0 has the insanely low latencies because they're doing digital-ish kind of transmission using an analog transmitter. So they're skipping ahead and dropping all this extra latency, which would require a digital decoder and encoding.
What's the name? What's the name? of that?
HD0.
HD0.
Yeah, they just
All right, I'm gonna look
released
for that too.
a new,
Put a link.
$600 plus set of goggles,
Right.
but they are roughly HD. But my Walksnails, I get around 33 to 35 millisecond latency, and HD0 can drop to as low as 3 millisecond. I'm not good enough to even feel the 35. Like I'm doing basic flying, but then there's traditional analog, which sinks in at around 3 to 8 millisecond as well. But the picture quality suffers, and it's standard definition.
I don't think anybody within the DJI world will want to go backwards. They're not going to go backwards. I believe they won't. So there you have it. I think, like, we kind of touched on the things that are the most different? Because everything else is pretty much the same, right? Like if you get away from all the panic buttons, return to home and all that other stuff, the drone is the drone.
Everything in the middle, if you're flying manual, is the same.
It's the same.
I will say this much, because I've flown both this, the Avata 1, and the original DJI FPV. When we talk about confidence, you will feel with a well-tuned drone, and most all the Biden flies are well-tuned. You're gonna have confidence knowing that this technically flies better than this. This will fly smoother than that, and that in itself will give you even more confidence.
That's good to know.
It has much better, movability and response.
I concur. I'm not doing crazy acrobatics, but I think some of the gaps that you saw me hitting with the B, I would never try with a DJI.
Right.
And this is literally a 7-inch frame using 5-inch motors and 5-inch presets for the flight control. There's nothing special I did to this, and it's fun to fly, and it's stable, and it's reliable.
All right, cool. So I really appreciate your time on this. I know a lot of people have questions. Matter of fact, if there's anything that I didn't touch on, leave it in the comments. I'm quick to respond. And I see these guys like almost weekly, so they can help me out answering your questions. So thanks for watching. We're gonna get back to flying and chasing RC planes. We probably did some overlay, so we didn't bore you guys. This way we can keep it action-packed and entertaining and educational. Did I say that right? Educational. Yeah, there you go. It sounded better the second time. All right, we out of here. Peace.